All right, so we're at the final book of the Nazarene Acts, book 10, starting at chapter 1. We'll just go ahead and jump into it. It says, "In the morning, after sunrise, I, Clement, and Nicetas and Aquila, along with Peter, came to the apartment in which my father and mother were sleeping, and finding them still asleep, we sat down before the door. Then Peter addressed us in such terms as these: 'Listen to me, most beloved fellow servants. I know that you have a great affection for your father. Therefore I am afraid that you will urge him too soon to take upon himself the yoke of obedience, while he is not yet prepared for it. And to this he may perhaps consent through his affection for you, but this is not to be depended on. For what is done for the sake of men is not worthy of approval, and soon falls to pieces. Therefore it seems to me that you should permit him to live for a year according to his own judgment, and during that time he may travel with us. And while we are instructing others, he may hear with simplicity, and as he hears, if he has any right purpose of acknowledging the truth, he will himself request that he take up the yoke of doctrine, for if he do not please to take it, he may remain a friend. For those who do not take it up heartily when they begin not to be able to bear it, not only cast off that which they had taken up, but by way of excuse, as it were, for their weakness, they begin to speak evil of the way of truth, and to malign those they have not been able to follow or to imitate.'" So, when I do these videos, these readings, I don't like prepare ahead of time for them. I just open up the file, the PDF, and start reading. This is not really a paragraph that I even remember, I guess, but I find it very biographical to my life in the last year. So there was I went through this type of situation where someone who had formerly submitted themselves to these doctrines, the Ebionite Nazarene way, decided to reject the way. And mostly I think it came from her children not wanting to follow, like her adult children not wanting to follow the way, not wanting to submit themselves to Jesus, to Yeshua, and they were pressuring her to not keep these commandments, and so she gave in to them. At least that's what I believe. I don't know for sure, but based upon things she said to me, that's what I think was going on. And all of this is true. Like the exact process that's laid out here. Because first, she was not able to bear it because of she couldn't stand up to pressure from other people. And so she decided to cast it off, but she couldn't just say that she just didn't want to do it anymore. She had to malign those who chose to follow it, particularly me. Made me, called me like unwilling to compromise and things of that nature, because she was wanting me to throw it off too. She was wanting me to give in to her own lack of fortitude, her own devotion to Jesus, which was wavering. She wanted me to waver also, and I refused to. And so because of that, we're no longer on speaking terms. This is somebody who was a member of my family, and so this is exactly what happens. People can't just say, I changed my mind or whatever, or this is more than I can bear or whatnot. They have to malign those who they're unable to follow. Like, they don't have the fortitude, they don't have the devotion to Jesus, to the faith in their own convictions in order to walk out the things they're convicted of. So what they have to do then is they have to use this as a way of excuse to cover up their own weaknesses. They speak evil of the way of truth. So yes, this is this really hit home to me reading this just now. Like, it's completely and totally accurate. To this, Nasidas answered. This is like that whole thing that the Bible says about being, blown one way or another by every wave of doctrine. It's kind of that same idea, I guess. It says, "My master Peter, I say nothing against your right and good counsels, but I wish to say one thing, that thereby I may learn something that I do not know. What if my father should die within the year during which you recommend that he should not be put off, or that he should be put off? He will go down to hell helpless, and so be tormented forever." Then said Peter, "I embrace your kindly purpose toward your father, and forgive you in respect of things which you are ignorant. For do you suppose that if anyone is thought to have lived righteously, he shall forthwith be saved? Do you not think that he should be examined by him who knows the secrets of men, as to how he has lived righteously, whether he has done according to the rule of the Gentiles, obeying their institutions and law, or for the sake of the friendship of men, or merely from custom, or any other cause, or from necessity, or not on account of justice itself, and for the sake of Yahweh? For those who have lived righteously for the sake of Yahweh alone and his justice, they shall come to eternal rest, and shall receive the perpetuity of the kingdom of heaven. For salvation is not attained by force, but by liberty, and not through the favor of men, but the faith of Yahweh. Then, besides, you ought to consider that God knows things beforehand, and he knows whether this man is one of his. But if he knows that he is not, what shall he do with respect to those things which have been determined by him from the beginning? But wherein I can, I give counsel when he is awake, and we shall sit down together. Then do you as if you wished to learn something, ask a question about those matters which it is fitting for him to learn, and while we speak to one another, he will gain instruction. But yet wait first to see if he himself ask anything, for if he do so, the occasion of discourse will be fitter. But if he does not ask anything," let's fix that grammar. "If he does not ask anything, let us by turns put questions to one another, wishing to learn something, as I've said, such as my judgment state what is yours." So maybe this paragraph here we should examine a little bit. It kind of stinks that it's split between pages. Do you not think? Okay, so first there's this assumption by Nasidas that if his father does not do everything that he needs to do, if he's not fully baptized and fully immersed into the doctrine of Yeshua, that he will go to hell and be tormented forever. Peter seems to, honestly, I think some of this, it doesn't really, in my mind, necessarily line up with some of the other statements that are made. But we'll see if maybe this is kind of looking at it from a different angle. At other places, it sounds like if a person is not baptized, that they will not obtain the kingdom, because they didn't do what Yahweh had ordained. He had ordained baptism, and if you neglect the commandments, the things you're commanded to do, you won't make it into the kingdom. But here Peter's saying that he's saying to Nasidas that he will be examined by him who knows the secrets of men, as to how he's lived righteously, whether he's done according to the rule of Gentiles, obeying their institutions and laws, and whether he just did it because of custom or just to please men, or if he did it on account of justice itself and for the sake of Yahweh. So, are you obeying the laws, the civil laws, I guess, and customs for the sake of justice itself and for wanting to live peacefully in the eyes of God, or are you doing it just to keep from going to jail? And he's saying, for those who have lived righteously for the sake of Yahweh alone and his justice, they shall come to eternal rest. So I think what he is saying is that even though you may have some doctrines wrong, the important thing is that you are living righteously for the sake of Yahweh and his justice. So this comes back to what Yeshua says in the Gospels. He says, seek first the justice of Yahweh and his kingdom. Now, usually in your Bibles it's mistranslated, seek first his righteousness, but the word there is dikaios, which is justice. So seek Yahweh's justice first. And so maybe this does actually kind of line up with what Peter said before, because he told us that that's what you're going to be judged on. You need to make sure you get this justice right. You need to seek after this first. And that's why I made that series of videos about seeking God's justice, because we have these false doctrines and things that have been added, these additions to the commandments in Scripture, and sometimes it's hard to see this underlying what some call like a blue thread that runs through Scripture. There's the red thread of sacrifices and bloodshed and all this stuff that's been added, this religious paganism that's been put into the Scripture. But then there's a blue thread that runs through, and the blue thread is the doctrines that are taught by Yeshua, the rejection of sacrifices by the prophets, the urgency to practice justice and righteousness. So the question is, can you see the blue thread? Can you follow the blue thread? Seek first that. Seek first that justice and righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. So at other places in the Nazarene Acts, Peter says that you will be judged upon what you know. And he emphasizes, though, don't pretend like you don't know what you do know, because you're not going to be able to trick God. God knows whether you know the truth or not. And so if you're one of these people, this person up here who rejects the yoke because they're not able to bear it, and then maligns the way of the truth and those who they're not able to follow, like, this is a person who is in a bad place. This person here is in danger, because they know what they're supposed to be doing and they're rejecting it, because for one reason or another they're not strong enough to walk in the way of truth, to walk in the way of justice. But I think what's being said here is that God will examine you, and then when he examines you, the question is, are you living righteously? And if you are living righteously, are you doing it for Yahweh? And of course, that's not about the name, that's about God. Are you following God to the best of your ability, to the best of your knowledge? And if you are, well, now my mouse isn't working. Then you will receive access to the kingdom of heaven. You do the best with the knowledge that you have. But if you reject knowledge, if you get to the point that you know better and you refuse to assent to what you know, that's when you're in in this zone up here, in the danger zone, right? For salvation is not attained by force, but by liberty, not through the favor of men, but by faith in Yahweh. And just to point out, because some might read this and read it through the lens of Paul, the faith of Yahweh. But faith is shown through your actions. So if you say that you have faith and you don't have actions demonstrating your faith, you don't have true faith. So if you're living unrighteously, but you say you have faith, you're not gonna get into the kingdom through that. You have to actually, walk the walk. Talking the talk's not good enough. You got to walk the walk too. So you ought to consider that God knows things beforehand and knows whether this man is one of his. But if he knows that he is not, what shall we do with respect to those things which we have determined by him from the beginning? So then they kind of like hash this plan to, to teach, to speak about things in the presence of the Father so that they can instruct him, the Father of Clement. So I think maybe if we examine this, it kind of makes like common sense type of sense, that God's not going to judge you for things you don't have any knowledge of. So if there are people in the church who have never, like my grandparents died not knowing anything about this stuff, not knowing anything about it. They, of course, ate meat their whole life, but they lived righteously. They were really good people and very devout. My grandfather probably knew the Bible better than most pastors. And they were both extremely generous to other people, very loving. So the question is somebody like that going to make it into the kingdom? I think so. And they died back in the early 2000s. This knowledge wasn't even being shared at that point. This is, in a lot of ways, when I dug all this stuff up 15 years ago, or it wasn't even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, there was no one else really talking about this. So is he going to judge my grandparents because of their lack of knowledge? No, he's not. He's not going to judge your grandparents either if they've passed on already. I think what Peter's saying is you get judged by what you know, which is reasonable for you to know. If you've never been told that Jesus taught not to eat meat, and you ate meat your whole life not knowing better, then if you honestly didn't know better, I think what Peter's saying is that's not going to be held against you. And when we had commended his right counsel, like Clement said, in all things, the end, for the most part, looks back upon the beginning, and the issue of things is similar to their commencement. I hope, therefore, with respect to our Father also, since God, by your means, has given a good beginning, that he will bestow also an ending suitable to the beginning and worthy of himself. However, I make this suggestion that if, as you have said, we begin to speak in the presence of my Father as for the purpose of discussing some subject, or learning something from one another, you, my master Peter, ought not to occupy the place of one who has anything to learn. For if he sees this, he will be rather offended, for he is convinced that you fully know all things, as indeed you do. How then will it be if he sees you pretending ignorance? This, as I said, would rather hurt him, being ignorant of your design. But if we brothers, while we converse amongst ourselves, are in any doubt, let a fitting solution be given by you for our inquiry. For if he sees even you hesitating and doubting, then truly he will think that no one has knowledge of the truth. To this Peter answered, Let us not concern ourselves about this, and if indeed it is fitting that he enter the gate of life, God will afford a fitting opportunity. And there shall be a beginning from God, and not from man. And therefore, as I have said, let him journey with us and hear our discussions, but because I saw you in haste, therefore I said that opportunity must be sought, and when Yahweh shall give it, do you comply with my advice in what I shall say. While we were thus talking, a boy came to tell us that our father was now awake, and when we were intending to go into him, he himself came to us, and saluting us with a kiss after we had sat down again, he said, Is it permitted for one to ask a question if he wishes it, or is silence enforced after the manner of the Pythagoreans? Then said Peter, We do not compel those who come to us either to keep silence continually or to ask questions, but we leave them free to do as they will, knowing that he who is anxious about his salvation, if he feels pain in any part of his soul, does not suffer to be silent, but he who neglects his salvation, no advantage is conferred upon him, if he is compelled to ask, excepting this only, that he may seem to be earnest and diligent. Wherefore, if you wish to get any information, ask on. Then the old man said, There is a saying very prevalent among the Greek philosophers to this effect, that there is in reality neither good nor evil in the life of man, but that men call things good or evil as they appear to them, prejudiced by the use of custom of life. For not even murder is really an evil, because it sets the soul free from the bonds of the flesh. Further, they say that even the just judges put death upon those who commit crimes, but if they knew homicide to be evil, just men would not do that. Neither do they say adultery is evil, for if the husband does not know or does not care, there is, they say, no evil in it. But neither say they, is theft an evil, for it takes away what one does not possess from another who has it. And indeed it ought to be taken freely and openly, but that in it is done secretly, and is rather a reproof of his humanity from whom it is secretly taken. For all men ought to have the shared use of all things that are in this world. But through injustice one says that this is his, and another that this is his, and so division is caused among men. So it sounds like the old man is asking about the doctrine of Democrats here. Theft is okay. In short, a certain man, the wisest among the Greeks, knowing that these things are so, says that friends should have all things communal. Now in all things, unquestionably, wives are included. He says also that as the air and the sunshine cannot be divided, so neither ought other things to be divided, which are given in this world to all to be possessed in common, but should be so possessed. But I wish to say this because I am desirous to turn into well-doing, and I cannot act well unless I first learn what is good, and if I can understand that, I shall thereby perceive what is evil, that is, opposite to good. But I should like that one of you, and not Peter, could answer my question, what I have said, for it is not fitting to take words in instruction at his hand with questions, but when he gives a deliverance on any subject, that should be held without answering again. And therefore let us keep him as an umpire, so that if at any time our discussion does not come to an issue, he may declare what seems to be good to him, and so give an undoubted end to doubtful matters. And now therefore I could believe, content with his sole opinion, if he expressed any opinion. And this is what I shall do at last. Yes, I wish to see first, if it is possible, by discussion to find what is sought. My wish, therefore, is that Clement should begin first, and should know if there is any good or evil in substance or in actions. To this I answer, since indeed you wish to learn from me if there is any good or evil in nature or in act, or whether it is not rather that men, prejudiced by custom, think some things to be good and others to be evil, forasmuch as they have made a division among themselves of communal things, which ought, as you say, to be public as the air and the sunshine, I think that I ought not to bring before you any statements from any other quarter than from those studies in which you are well versed, and which you support, so that what I say you will receive without hesitation. You assign certain boundaries of all the elements in the heavenly bodies, In these you say, meet in some without hurt, as in marriages, but in others they are hurtfully united, as in adulteries. And you say that some things are communal to all, but other things do not belong to all, and are not communal. But not to make a long discussion, I shall speak briefly of the matter. The earth, which is dry, is in need of the addition and admixture of water, that it may be able to produce fruits, without which man cannot live. This is therefore a legitimate conjunction. On the contrary, if the cold of hoarfrost be mixed with the earth, or heat with the water, a conjunction of this sort produces corruption, and this, in such things, is adultery. Then my father answered, but as the harmfulness of an inharmonious conjunction of elements or stars is immediately betrayed, so ought also adultery to be immediately shown that it is evil. Then I, first tell me this, whether, as you yourself have confessed, evils are produced from incongruous and inharmonious mixture, and then, after that, we shall inquire as to the other matter. Then my father said, the nature of things is as you say, my son. Then I answered, since then you wish to learn of these things, see how many things there are which no one doubts to be evils. Do you think that a fever, a fire, sedition, the fall of a house, murder, holds, racks, pangs, mournings, and such like are evils? Then said my father, it is true, my son, that these things are evil, and very evil, or at all events whosoever denies that they are evil, let him suffer them. Then I answered, since therefore you have to deal with one who is skilled in astrological science, I shall treat the matter with you according to that science, that taking my method from those things which you are familiar, you may more readily acquiesce. Listen now, therefore, you confess that those things which we have mentioned are evils, such as fevers, conflagrations, and such like. Now these, according to you, are said to be produced by malignant stars, such as the humid Saturn and the hot Mars, but things contrary to these are produced by benign stars, such as the temperate Jupiter and the humid Venus. Is it not so? My father answered, it is so, my son, and cannot be otherwise. Then I said, since you say, therefore, that good things are produced by good stars, by Jupiter and Venus, for example, let us see what the product where any one of these evil stars is mixed with the good, and let us understand that that is evil. For you lay down that Venus makes marriages, and if she have Jupiter in her configuration, she makes the marriages chaste. But if Jupiter be not regarding and Mars be present, then you pronounce that the marriages are corrupted by adultery. Then said my father, it is even so. Then I answered, therefore adultery is an evil, seeing that it is committed through the admixture of evil stars. And to state in a word, all things that you say that are the good stars suffer from the mixture of evil stars are undoubtedly to be pronounced to be evil. Those stars, therefore, by whose admixture we have said that fevers, configurations, and other such like evils are produced. Those, according to you, work also murders, adulteries, thefts, and also produce haughty and stolid men. Then my father said, truly you have shown briefly and incomparably that these are evils in actions, but still I should wish to learn this, how God justly judges those who sin, as you say, if Genesis compels them to sin. Then I answered, I am afraid to speak anything to you, my father, because it becomes me to hold you in all honor, else I have an answer to give you if it were becoming. Then says my father, speak what occurs to you, my son, for it is not you, but the method of inquiry that does the wrong, as a modest woman to an unrestrained man, if she is indignant for her safety and her honor. Then I answered, if we do not hold by the principles that we have acknowledged and confessed, but those things which have been defined are always loosened by forgetfulness, we shall seem to be weaving Penelope's web, undoing what we have done, and therefore we ought either not to acquiesce too easily before we have diligently examined the doctrine propounded, or if we have once acquiesced and the proposition has been agreed to, we ought to keep what has been once determined, that we may go on with our inquiries respecting other matters. And my father said, you say well, my son, and I know why you say this. It is because the discussion yesterday on natural causes, you showed that some malignant power transferred itself to the others. Order of the stars excites the lust of men, provoking them to various ways to sin, yet not compelling or producing sins. To this I answered, it is well that you remember it, and yet, though you do remember it, you have fallen into error. Then said my father, Pardon me, my son, for I have not yet much practice in these things, for indeed your discourses yesterday, by their truth, shut me up to agree with you. Yet in my consciousness there are, as it were, some remnants of fevers, which for a little hold me back from faith, as from health, for I am distracted, because I know that many things, yea, almost all things, have befallen me according to Genesis. Then I answered, I shall therefore tell you, my father, what is the nature of mathematics, and do you act according to what I tell you. Go to a mathematician, and tell him first that such and such evils have befallen you at such a time, and that you wish to learn from him whence or how, or through what stars they have befallen you. He will no doubt answer you that a malignant Mars or Saturn has ruled your times, or that some one of them have been periodic, or someone has regarded you diametrically, or in conjunction, or centrally, or some such answer will he give, adding that in all these someone will not in harmony with the malignant one, or is invisible, or was in the figure, or was beyond the division, or was eclipsed, or was not in contact, or was among the dark stars, and many other like things he will answer according to his own reasons, and will condescend upon particulars. After him, go to another mathematician and tell him the opposite, that such and such good happened to you at that time, mentioning to him the same time, and ask him from what parts of your Genesis this good has come to you, and take care, as I've said, that the times are the same with those about which you ask concerning evils. And when you have deceived him concerning the times, see what figures he will invent for you, by which to show that good things ought to have befallen you at these very times. For it is impossible for those treating of the genesis of men not to find in every quarter, as they call it, of the heavenly bodies, some stars favorably placed, and some unfavorably, for the circle is equally complete in every part, according to mathematics, admitting of diverse and various causes, from which they take occasion of saying whatever they please. For as usually happens when men see unfavorable dreams, they can make nothing certain out of them. When any event occurs, then they adapt what they saw in the dream to what has occurred, so as also in mathematics. Because before anything happens, nothing is declared with certainty. But after something has happened, they gather the cause of the event. And thus often, when they have been at fault and the thing has fallen out otherwise, they take the blame to themselves, saying that it was such and such a star which opposed, and that they did not see it, nor knowing that their error does not proceed from their unskillfulness in their art, but from the inconsistency of the whole system. For they do not know what those things are which we indeed desire to do, but in regard to which we do not indulge our desires. But we who have learned the reason of this mystery know the cause, since having free will we sometimes oppose our desires and sometimes yield to them, and therefore the issue of human doings is uncertain, because it depends upon free will. For a mathematician can indeed indicate the desire which a malignant power produces, but whether the acting or the issue of the desire shall be fulfilled or not, no one can know before the accomplishment of the thing, because it depends upon free will. And this is why ignorant astrologers have invented themselves the talk about climactics as a refuge in uncertainties, as we showed fully yesterday. So, essentially, I think what Clement's saying, he's saying, look, no one can predict anything with certainty, but then once something has happened and you ask them for the reason, they're going to invent whatever reason suits the event. And so it's like, it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. The event happens, and then you come up with the explanation through your astrology. If you have anything that you wish to say to this, say on. Then, my father, nothing can be more true, my son, than what you have stated. And while we were thus speaking amongst ourselves, someone informed us that a great multitude of people were standing outside, having assembled for the purpose of hearing. Then Peter ordered them to be admitted, for the place was large and convenient. And when they had come in, Peter said to us, if any of you wishes, let him address the people and discourse concerning idolatry. To whom I, Clement, answered, your great benignity and gentleness and patience toward all encourages us, so that we dare speak in your presence and ask what we please. And therefore, as I said, the gentleness of your disposition invites and encourages all to undertake the precepts of said doctrine. saving doctrine. This I never saw before in anyone else, but in you only, with whom there is neither envy nor indignation. Or what do you think? So it looks like they're getting ready to start the instructions for the day. So we'll go ahead and take a break here, and we'll pick it up in chapter 14 next time. So thanks for listening. Shalom.